Greetings, friends. We are just about to get started. All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Amy Antonucci, and I am a New Hampshire Peace Action Education Fund board member. I'm really glad to welcome you to our Peace and Justice Conversation series online for Monday, November 17th, 2025. Tonight, we're really pleased to welcome Sarah Zale to discuss resistance, peace, and poetry. First, I have a little info to convey here. For over 40 years, New Hampshire Peace Action has been educating, mobilizing, and organizing to build a more peaceful and just future for all that is based on cooperation instead of competition and conflict, and allows for mutual benefit and shared security to be shared throughout the global community. In that spirit of respect, we do want to start with an acknowledgement that we do our work on the traditional ancestral homelands of the Abenaki, Wabanaki, and Pennacook peoples, past and present. We honor with gratitude the land, the water, and the people who have been in relationship throughout the generations. Quick reminder on Zoom guidelines, we love when you have your video on, but we will have your audio muted to start with. Later on, there'll be a time for audience Q&A, and at that point, we'll allow for hand raising as well as pulling questions from the chat. So with all that said, I'm going to turn this over to board member Scott Dickman to introduce our program and our speaker. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Amy, and welcome to tonight's program, everybody. Katie and I both really look forward to this. So tonight I'm speaking with my friend and poet, Katie Zale, and we're both facilitators with a compassionate listening organization, Compassionate Listening Project, forgive me. And I invited Katie because her newly published anthology, Winter in America, again, offers a powerful exploration of our shared political and emotional landscape. This collection of poems speaks to both the sting of disillusionment and the quiet hope for a renewal, weaving together themes of criticism, compassion, and healing. And through these poems, Katie invites us to reflect on what it means to remain human, even tender, in times that often feel divided and uncertain. Katie, it's a pleasure to have you with me, and I'm eager to talk about what inspired Winter in America again, the creative process, what you discovered in the process of writing it, and how poetry might help us find our way through these difficult times. Let's begin. So, Katie, my first question to you is in regard to motivation. What inspired you to curate this anthology in the first place? And were there moments during this project when you questioned whether poetry could even make a difference? Please.
Well, thank you, Scott, for this opportunity to speak to the New Hampshire Peace Action on this topic of resistance, peace, and poetry. I'm grateful, thank you. So what inspired this anthology, Winter in America again? Well, I was working on the biography of poet Sam Hamill, who founded Copper Canyon Press, which is a prestigious Northwest publishing establishment. They publish only poetry. And he served as its editor for 32 years. Now, Sam had written in his own anthology called Poets Against the War, which was a response to George W. Bush's plan to invade Iraq. And he wrote, "These are the voices of our poets. They come from every segment of society. They also celebrate our country by expounding a compassionate view of the universe. A government is a government of words, and when those words are used to mislead, to instill fear, or to invite silence, it is the duty of every poet to speak fearlessly and clearly. So I had a conversation with Paul Nelson, who is Sam's literary executor. And we kind of said that old saying, what would Sam do? We wondered, should we ask poets to respond to the 2024 election? And we did. So Paul and I brought in 6 other editors to help us. We worked daily to try and give birth to this collection of poems before the inauguration, which was just 2 months later. Impossible task, but we did it, sacrificing work, family, jobs, everything. And your other question, yes, all of us believed that poetry could make a difference. It was our protest, let's say. But what kind of difference? Mainly to open readers to what is happening to the world and to encourage reflection. Now, poets of history, mind you, do not really believe they can change the world, nor do they have the intention to. I'll kind of leave that up in the air, but I'll address that issue.
Katie, by the way, how long did it take you from start to finish to bring this to fruition?
We had it published by inauguration.
Wow.
So it was basically, a little more than 2 weeks. So we put out a copy, and even though we did our best, there were a few, we had to go back and tweak, for a second edition that came out a few months later. But pretty much it was all finished by the inauguration.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. So do you see poetry as a way to make sense of what's happening in the world, or more as a way to connect emotionally with others experiencing, the same turmoil?
Well, on one hand, poetry is a way to make sense of what's happening in the world. And it's a way to connect emotionally with others experiencing the same. I only express my own perspective, that my work and life are dedicated to changing myself in relation to the world rather than trying to change the world. As Gandhi is credited with saying, "Be the peace you wish to see in the world." Right. Though his exact words might be translated a little more clearly as more as personal responsibility and self-improvement are the foundation for societal change. So instead of complaining or waiting for others, one should act in a way they desire the world to be. Right. So from my Buddhist perspective, life is a journey of self-knowledge. Poetry is a vehicle to learn about the self and our role in relation to the world. Now, some of my fellow editors would answer this differently. We learned how we differed in our various aesthetic approaches or philosophies. We talked, we argued, 8 of us, always with the goal, however, to highlight multiple aesthetics.
Katie, if I may, I wonder, would it be inappropriate of me to ask you to share what some of those diverse perspectives might be? What do you think? No names.
No names. No. Well, no, it's not so much that. I mean, it's understandable that some people are, I want to use terms that I think maybe everyone understands, but maybe the Romantics, or before there was free verse, or some of our editors were what's called postmodern. If I could say that in a way, experimental poets, the E. E. Cummings maybe would be familiar to a lot of people. Charles Olson, people that have and language poets. Or think about, I always use this example, think about, remember the Bohemian type thing or the Allen Ginsberg.
Right.
I always would laugh at that at like the coffee houses when they might say, the tree and beyond that, there I go. It's just off the top of my head, but I mean, it's something that some people today say, no, poetry should be about rhyming. It should have iambic pentameter. And a lot of us people differed. I hope that gives at least a little insight.
Yeah, very much so, Katie. Yeah, thank you. There are times you want to be a fly on the wall, for some of these debates and conversations. Looking at my notes, so your anthology seems to bridge criticism and healing, two forces that might seem unrelated. How do you see them working together in the process or execution of poetry, or the reading of poetry?
Well, Scott, you and I are facilitators for Compassionate Listening Project, and I'm just going to call it CL, which I also see tries to bridge criticism or conflict with healing. And we believe that all of us are wounded and that we each possess wisdom and goodness if we are deeply and compassionately listened to. So criticism, anger, pain, they often come from not understanding the bigger picture, the other side. The editors of Winter in America, again, chose not to publish poems in which the poet had not done the work. If the poem's tone was predominantly ranting or screeds, we passed on it.
Yeah, yeah.
So second, the CL philosophy believes that the best answer to a conflict someone has can be found in the speaker. So the practice of compassionate listening helps people on their journey because it helps them better understand that they already know and feel and have clarity about the next direction they should take. So I'm not saying that we should struggle to not take a side. We all have biases. We must begin by finding clarity about our biases, then opening ourselves up to new experiences, particularly those that seem adverse to our beliefs, in order to explore and learn how we act in those diverse situations. That's the journey. I thought of an example as I read this article the other day that I have here, I'll share. And it's an example of a voice that has clear opinions and biases, but is open to understanding more. So this is how it went. When your country pursues abhorrent policies, when the face it turns to the world is the face of a monster, what does that say about you? In my experience, it is strikingly easy to shrug off one's responsibility for the country where one pays taxes, contributes to the public conversation, and at least nominally has the right to vote. Now, if that country is the United States, it seems one can just say, not in my name, and continue to enjoy the wealth and the freedom of movement that one's citizenship confers. But as this country builds more cages for immigrants, deploys military force against civilians in city after city, regularly commits murder on the high seas, and systematically destroys its own democratic institutions, that may change. It should change. But what does one do then? How can one be a good citizen of a bad state? So I chose that example because the tone eventually suggests an openness. It asks questions. And poetry, too, should be a place to open up our questions, study them with a microscope of the senses, and give them a rhythm to see how they hold up in the world. Sometimes they survive no longer than a sidewalk drawn with chalk, but sometimes they're published for others to enjoy, critique or memorize and make their own. Note, too, that the title of the anthology is Winter in America, parentheses, again, with no closing parentheses.
Right.
That indicates an openness to what is happening next.
I was going to ask you about that, open parentheses.
Yeah, a lot of people do say, oh, mistake, you forgot it. No, that was Charles Olson style, and it has a new way of looking at punctuation, but to say we're open.
Yeah. Elements of what you were relating to us reminds me in compassionate listening, we sort of adhere to the notion that conflict is opportunity. And I hear that in some of the comments that you've made. Yeah, thank you so much. So on a more personal level, what did this project feel like for you emotionally? Was it cathartic, challenging, healing? Have you had any feedback, from others? Could you share that, please?
It was very difficult, just as it's always difficult with dealing with people that don't agree with you. And here we are poets. We have a great investment. Poetry is a big investment in our identity. So it really took in my case, I'd say a Buddhist practice to not let ego get in my way, but instead to closely listen to what the other person is saying and learn from it. And I truly did. So, and readers, I think all of us did, a lot of the editors really took care that we shared our belief that the book is open to different sides. Obviously, it had its bias, and yet we thought it would be open to most readers that are on maybe the similar journey. I'll give you a couple experiences. So and this was at the same reading. It took place in a restaurant garden with about 10 round tables. Now, people, most of whom did not know each other, were only able to sit with strangers and chat and eat. So, and one person I invited considers herself quite conservative. And I hoped she would not feel too uncomfortable or offended by the poem she heard. But when she left, she bought a book.
Right.
My second anecdote is after the reading by the published poets in the book, I encouraged people to choose a poem from the anthology, something that resonated with them. And they did. And one woman approached me after the reading and said, "Thank you for this. I really needed this. It was healing."
Yeah.
So
I'm glad to hear. I'm sorry.
No, got me going here. So I mean, I've just
It's all
found that
good.
as a result of many readings around the country, and we've toured around the country, or we've tried to set up workshops and readings, for example, on the East Coast. And we found that the listeners, be they Republicans or independent or otherwise, are not offended by the poems. The poems seem mostly to reflect a thoughtful and non-judgmental tone that the human ear can receive without defensiveness. Now, we are very aware that there are many, many angry poems in the social media world about what is happening in the country today. And we did not wish to encourage nor support this. We believe that criticism and healing can work together.
Just out of curiosity, Katie, you referred to non-judgment. How important a factor is that, do you think, in the course of conversation and reading and listening to poetry?
In terms of my own practice, it is very important. The compassionate listening ideals are very much integral to my craft and my inspiration for writing poetry.
Yeah. I'm not surprised to hear that, knowing you. Thank you. Thank you so much. So when selecting the poems, Katie, did you avoid poetry that may have seemed too despairing or alternatively too positive? Was there a balance that you were trying to achieve, as you curated the poetry for the book?
Well, I did mention that we did avoid screeds but in terms of despairing or positive, I would say that honest self-reflection is like a child, I think, offering something innocently, naively, that others seem to have an easier time accepting. When we offer our simple truths, we're not interested in manipulating, proselytizing, persuading. We're only asking to be listened to. I would say that if it seems pretty despairing, there hasn't been the work done to go past that. And if it's optimistic, too optimistic, I think there's a blindness to what's happening in the world.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just me, one of many of 7 other editors may have had a different, but that's really my position.
Yeah, and that's the one I care about. Thank you, Bea. So do you think poetry has the power to help people see each other differently in such a polarized time?
Well, absolutely. But again, I just want to emphasize that it's more contingent on doing the work of your own reflection. Yeah, I keep going back to that. Can it help? If my philosophy again is that poetry is about changing me,
Right.
not so much changing the world.
Yeah.
I find that really interferes with my personal relationships, not only my poetry, if I have a need to change what others are thinking. Instead, I like to say that compassionate listening will help people understand really what is happening within them and where they are on this journey.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. So out of curiosity, have readers or audiences share their responses? That's, I suppose, in a way that surprised or moved you?
Well, in the way that I gave you those 2 examples at the reading, and they always do after our readings. We've done many, all particularly in the West, but people feel very free to come up to us and share what they think. Yeah.
Okay. And which poets or writers have influenced your work most deeply, especially on themes of justice or renewal?
Which poets? Well, I believe that poetry is essentially the same as it's always been since Confucius and Lao Tzu, Tao Te Ching in the mid-6th century BCE, and the art of writing, which came out in 3rd century AD. I don't think poetry has changed. And so understanding what the ancients had to say about poetry is the same thing that guides me today. And I choose to read or be inspired by poets that believe the same way.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, no, I get that. Maybe a little differently, in times of conflict or political division, such as we're living through, do you believe a poet has a special role, to play? Putting it out there.
Yeah. Just to continue on their journey of interacting with the world, understanding who they are in relation to the world, and using their talent, using their art to express that in terms of poetry.
Interesting, thank you. And maybe lastly, do you imagine poetry evolving in a way that may not be present for us at this time, but evolving in such a way that it may have a more direct role to play in social political life? Is that unfair to ask?
Well, what I'm going to say, maybe in a little bit different words, is that I don't think poetry will evolve. That it's not poetry that's evolving. It has always been pretty much what it is today. And that's certainly a big conversation. But it's we who need to evolve. And hopefully that includes, particularly in this country, an appreciation for the art of poetry. We don't have that in America. We don't seem to appreciate enough its value.
Yeah. Thank you. And I wonder, maybe lastly, I see we're closing in on a half hour. Katie, is there a poem within the anthology that you'd like to share with us that has particular significance for you or representative?
Well, I did have a poem, but if I may, I wanted to give a sense of, in the preface, talked about the different poets and what they brought to this anthology. And I would like to share that. And if we have time, I can share a poem later.
It's your show.
But in this collection, one thing that particularly pleases me is that a woman that I am writing to in a Texas prison, her poem was accepted. And so this excerpt from the preface starts with an excerpt from her poem. So I say, in this collection, incarcerated poet Juanetta Yatrice Harris writes, quote, "From my cell, I see you, reading these words and wondering how we let fear work so well that we became what we feared most." And Kay Bell speaks for women still seeking their voice and power. Quote, "I've been this woman in this apple-shaped body with this coiled woolly hair slipping into a raging red moon at midnight, where my vision is the flesh of freedom, a place where I do not have to be obedient. Sherry Brown suggests, let's all go to the American site of equality. In the Waffle House, we are all equal. Okay to be queer. And echoing her, M.A. Nicholson presents a narrator rejected for their gender identity. Quote, billboards presenting overblown images of very young women, smooth skin, white, blonde tresses, arguing for their rights, for plural marriage. And I will be turned away from the hotel where I made reservations, redirected to stay elsewhere. Catalina Marie Catu reminiscence, quote, my immigrant ancestors knit, crocheted, and sewed their worries into garments. I wore garments I wore from the time I was born. Martina Spada reminds us of the separation of parent and child in Tornillo, Texas in 2018 and 19. And Anna Odessa Lunzer connects with nature, which may be the foremost challenge of the human species faces at this time, as she encourages the red-breasted sapsucker, quote, we find each other eye to eye. How did we find each other here in this treeless, cold place, and yet cannot save each other? And Anne Graham Walker implores, bring empathy, bring poems, wherever you are called to go to serve these times.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so very much, Katie.
Mm-hmm.
Amy, we're at the 35 minutes. I'm going to open it up for Q&A. And I invite anyone and everyone to, submit a question, for Katie that you feel is pertinent.
And it would, great, thank you. There are some there's one in the chat already, and you're welcome to use that. And we will call on people. It's a great help if you can use the, the digital hand, because I can't see everyone in the screen. So please go ahead and do that though, and I will call on people.
Thank you.
Yeah, for the moment though, like I said, we've got one
in chat, David Erickson.
Yeah, so sorry, just so David says, we don't listen to spoken poetry in great numbers in the US, but we hear sung poetry a lot, and sometimes we listen carefully. Joni Mitchell's is among those I value. I wonder if you have thoughts on that.
I didn't. Who do you hear the most? Who was it? Somebody Mitchell?
Joni Mitchell.
Oh, Joni Mitchell, the song for singing.
Yeah, he's pointing out that is one way poetry does actually reach a lot of people in this country at this time.
It's through music, yeah. And there is it's not only music, but a lot of performance poetry. So maybe in a way, Scott's question about evolving, something we're doing is not necessarily the poetry evolving, but the way that we interact with poetry is changing. Poetry, of course, started out as an oral art, and we've put it on the page. And so now it's kind of like I can see a full circle. We're going back to understanding that this is something we should be listening to our words. And I kind of like that. It ties in, Scott, also with compassionate listening. So yeah, I hope that addressed the question about performance, not only song, but the actual performing of poetry. We call it's a difference between poetry on the page and poetry on the stage. if you've heard that. Yeah, so now people are saying, are you a page poet or are you a stage poet?
That's great. Thank you. More questions?
And I see, I thought I saw a hand, but then, oh yeah, okay.
Oh, Cam?
I'm trying to ask to unmute. Is it working? You will
Not
need
yet.
to unmute. Yeah, there you go. You got
There
it.
we go.
Hi, thanks. Sorry, I can't find the digital hand. So, thanks. So, hi, Katie. I'm Cam. I too am a compassionate listening facilitator. So it's nice to meet you. And I just wanted to mention, as you know, our third core practice is about respect. And that's something I'm finding a little challenging right now with some people's decisions and things. And so just out of curiosity, I was wondering if respect was touched on in any of the poems off the top of your head that you know of.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if we sat down and really talked about the issues that are at play right now, why people are in so much, either anger or, anger or pain, it's because people expressing that they are not being respected. They're not able to live the kind of life that they think is possible for people to live in. Let's just talk about this country. So yeah, definitely identity, respect, um, and the pain that comes from the lack of that. Definitely topics. And hopefully you heard it in just that little brief reading that I did
Yeah.
about what these people are talking about.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cam.
Here's another from the chat. Oh, Kay, who is a wonderful New Hampshire poet with own published volumes. She is wondering, is there a particular organizational structure to the anthology? How did you order the poems in the final volume?
Great question.
Well, I hope you're going to smile too. We did it alphabetically. I hope there's a little compassion for us working for 2 weeks or 2 months. It's 2 weeks. How do we put this together? And it was a learning experience for a lot of us. So maybe, and we are doing a sequel, doing a call for poems already, and it's called Winter in America Still. So
Right.
I'll have to contact you and see what kind of ideas you have for us to to look at it. But it really isn't as simple. I think would be a follow-up to that. Isn't it simple to say these are let's put everybody who's let's put transgender poems here. Because they aren't. I just as we talk about in compassionate listening, we're looking at one another holistically. There's so many parts of us, each one of us, divided into all these little pieces of the pie. And the poems seem to go like that too. It isn't just about one particular topic.
Thank you, Katie.
Chris has a hand up. I'm going to have him go next. Chris, who sent me a beautiful poem, not that he wrote, but that he found last week. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. I want to follow up on David Erickson's comment and ask, well, just so much really powerful poetry and poetry that's had a wide impact is poetry that's been put into song and then become important peace songs or justice songs. And I'm wondering if there are poems in the anthology that you could see taking on that kind of a additional life on a stage or out a recording or something like anything that gets it even further out into the world.
Interesting question, Chris.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I have to do my homework on that. Do it. I mean, really look at them in that light. I do want to bring up, though, that the Winter in America, Gil Scott Heron, I'm not sure if any of you knew that's where the title came from. But so the inception of the anthology came from a song in Gil Scott Heron. So if you have a chance to go on the internet and listen to that, that's one thing we could have, I guess we still could, I don't know, have time to play that. If you wanted to bring that up, Scott. But to your main question, whether I could pull one from the anthology that could be put to song, I'm going to keep that in mind, you know, in not only this, but the sequel.
All right, we have a couple more questions. Will Thomas says, when Trump was sworn in on January 20, 2025, there were two wars going on, Ukraine and Gaza. Were there any poems associated with either of those?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it certainly mentions, I mean, it's a sprinkle throughout the poems, whether you mention, um, you know, Sudan, you know, places in, you know, otherwise in Africa, and even within our own country, you know, we'd have to define war, right? There's a lot of wars and antagonism going on between countries and groups of people. You know, we're much more global. We don't stay within borders anymore. A lot of so anyway, yeah, sprinkled throughout Gaza, certainly Ukraine. If I'd known you guys were going to ask these questions, I would have pulled those poems. But
We'll have to bring you back.
on that note, what I just hope is people get this book themselves and can answer those questions for themselves. So if I may do a little promoting there.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find a link to the anthology. I don't think it's on the one I found before. I have another question here, and I'm trying to see where Sandra is, because I might ask her to say more about what she thinks if I can find her. But let me say so far, Sandra is wondering, how about a collaboration between New Hampshire Peace Action and the new anthology, Winter in America Still? Is that of interest and a possibility for the group? Now, Sandra, I'm not sure what kind of collaboration you mean, but I am interested to hear. Would you be willing to say more? Or maybe, Katie, you want to respond right now?
Yeah, I'd have the same question. I'm not sure what she means by collaboration. You know, we certainly would love lots of poems from Peace Action, you know, sent to us. Who knows? We can be creative about grouping them together. You know, speaking of organization, you know, it's all open now, and we are a very open group. We're down
Okay,
to 4 editors now, but
I have found Sandra and gotten her to unmute. Sandra, could you say a little more?
Yes, I was thinking particularly about not only marketing, but also maybe even rather than sporadic poems throughout the anthology, a particular section that would be devoted to the Peace Action Group and the anthology itself. Like, I so believe that collaboration is the way that listening happens. And so I was thinking that if we could do something together that would, you know, align the forces perhaps something could come of that. Exactly how I see that, like Katie, I need some time to figure that one out. But I do believe that there's a way of doing this, and it would be exciting, I think.
Uh,
That's
I,
it.
I totally agree. And as long as I've got Sandra here, Sandra is published in the anthology. So we could get people to read from the book. Sandra, you could read your poem if we have some time.
Oh, it would take me time to find it. But I just want to say that it's a wonderful, wonderful book. And the poems vary so greatly that no matter who you are, you would find something there that resonates for you and that inspires you to become the person that you are in the sense of trusting in your faith and hope for the highest light to prevail. I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
And thank you, Sandra. Appreciate that.
So I did find some links. One to find and buy the one that is already out that does not a way to buy it other than Amazon, which I highly encourage. And also the call for submissions for the new one is there in the chat. winterinamerica.org will get you to all of that also. Let's see what else I've got. Oh, Diane was saying that she remembers the popularity of poetry slams about 30 years ago in down near Boston. I'm not sure if there are, she's wondering maybe if there's some opportunities for more readings, if that's something people would be excited to partake in again.
Yes, slams are really popular with younger, a lot of younger people. So if I put it on a continuum, it's kind of like the page poet, performance poet, and slam poets. The only difference with slam poetry is that it's performance poetry that's in a competition. So.
Got it. Okay, similar in the storytelling world. Let's see, other questions? I'm looking around for hands. And Scott, I don't know if something has occurred to you.
No, but I'm impressed by the questions and quite honestly, the last one, Katie, insofar as how you distinguished performance from slam. It reminds me that, or rather, it reinforces for me how the creative process, you can't hold the creative processes down. They're always going to percolate up in some way or form. And, that just moves me so deeply. Truly. So that's all I got for now. Katie, just out of curiosity, in the course of your other readings, around the country, is there a question or two that you recall, that you were really moved by that we haven't asked tonight? It's difficult, but out of curiosity.
Yeah, no, I think I've taken a lot of those questions and that experience in and tried to use that tonight, covering a lot of those issues, like why did we choose certain poems? What was the inspiration? What was the philosophy behind it? That's what a lot of people are curious, especially if they're thinking of submitting again themselves. We are doing workshops, free workshops, that talk more about what we're looking for in the next book. If anyone is interested in that, knowing about those workshops, you can get hold of Scott or myself. And yeah.
True. Happy to cooperate with anybody. I'll connect you. I'll do what I can to get the information for you. Just let
And
us know.
if there are more ideas on how to collaborate, you can connect to me also. I wanted to, we did have another one. Oh, Patty was wondering if there are other singers other than Gil Scott-Heron who inspired you or gave you epiphanies on how to approach your work.
Well, I am the most influenced. I'm so ensconced now in writing this biography on Sam Hamill, someone I respect tremendously, and he is. I never was a jazz enthusiast until I learned, particularly through Sam and other of the poets in the early 20th century, of how close they saw jazz music related to the development of poetry into free verse. So, yep, on my Spotify, I'm listening to a lot of jazz now, and in specific, and because I'm kind of a novice at this newbie, I'm just exploring all over the place, not just staying with Miles Davis or Coltrane or whatever, even though their improvisational manners are just knocking me, for a loop. That's what I got for you. Besides Gil Scott-Heron, though, absolutely listening to all of his work, which I wasn't as familiar with before.
I see Sandra's hand up, and I was just going to ask you if we have time. While Sandra is asking the question, Katie, do you have space for another reading? Is there another poem that you'd like to share with us? But let Sandra go.
Oh, okay.
I found my poem and I thought I'd read it to you if you have the time.
Is that okay?
Please do.
There we go.
Okay, it's called Someday. Someday, the march to follow the money will transform into the march to follow the breath.
Yes.
Someday, the random use of words, the vitriolic abuse of words will die in coffin compost. Someday, the heartache I feel, the twisted snake in my gut, will gather with you, sisters and brothers, and turn our dove despair into nightingale joy. 'Cause that's what families do. They dazzle together, a cluster of pink, orange, yellow coneflowers, united stars spinning into the sun's embrace. And we, one humanity, will breathe ourselves back to where we long to belong. Awakened, awakened, awakened.
Wow. Sandra, thank you.
Thank you.
That's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Wow.
And I hope everyone can see in that. You'd ask questions about despair or optimism. I always, I would place Sandra generally in her poetry as kind of leaning towards the optimism. But you notice within this poem that the tone of despair, she uses the word despair, but that uncertainty is also within the poem. And that's the kind of things that I was looking for when I was choosing poems to publish. Well, thank you, Sandra. I'll share one about by Scott Lawrence. Maybe some of you poets might know him. And it's called American Hero. And he has two epigraphs with it. First of all, it's dedicated to Aaron Bushnell, who self-immolated himself to protest the genocide in Gaza. There's also a reference, someone asked about Gaza. A second epigraph was a quote by an Israeli consulate security guard who says, "We don't need guns, we need fire extinguishers." American Hero. There's an elephant in the room of my heart. There's a hole in the word that I speak. There's a fire in the whole of the words that I speak. Sweet man in a bitter smoke, kind man in military fatigues that are tired of their mission. Burning man following the trail of fire, the trail of tears, son of martyrs, fathers of future beauty. They say poetry can save your life. Poetry asks of you another life. But I am thinking about Aaron Schnell, wanting to ask him, wanting to be with him and hold his hand. Stepping into a lake of fire, this is my gift to you, young brother, old ancestor, bodhisattva, saint, flare. How dare they not allow their hearts to break?
Oh my, thank you, Katie.
I think you also see in this poem I had mentioned earlier that the sprinkling of various things, like, yes, about Gaza, but it brings back memories of Tik Quoc Duc, who was self-immolated himself in Saigon during Vietnam. They throw in Trail of Tears, they throw in, so there's Burning Man. We have all these images in this quality poetry that it's not a poem you would read just once. It's something you go back to. Quality poetry are ones that draw you back in again. And each time you read it, you feel something different. You learn something new. That's the journey of poetry and our goal towards what? Inner peace before we're ever going to find world peace.
So it is time for me to wrap things up. Scott, did you want to say anything before I do that?
Well, firstly to Katie, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I mean, that was just exquisite. I really appreciate that. And to our community here, that chose to join. We've all benefited, from your comments, Katie. Thank you so much. And your work. Thank you. Thanks, Amy.
Yeah. Thanks to everyone, Scott, Katie, and all that have joined us, who've commented or just listened and taken it in. We appreciate you all. Stay in touch with us at New Hampshire Peace Action, nhpeaceaction.org. And also we're on Facebook to learn more about what we're working on and what programming we have coming up. I'm going to give you a few highlights. I want you to note that we have this week 2 Just Peace in the Middle East vigils in person. Wednesday, November 19th, 2 to 3 p.m. We'll be at Representative Pappas's office in Dover. Then on Thursday, November 20th, folks from noon to 1 will be at City Plaza in Concord. That's both in New Hampshire. On Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, November 19th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, we have a very special Zoom program. We're joining Not in My Name, New Hampshire, in presenting Life Under Occupation in the West Bank with Issa Amro, a human rights activist and nonviolence practitioner living in Hebron. in the occupied West Bank. He's a co-founder of Youth Against Settlements and executive director of Working for Peace and Justice Friends of Hebron. Then next Monday, November 24, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Zoom, we bring you New Hampshire State Representative Ellen Reed, who is recently back from the Thousand Madeleines to Gaza flotilla that sailed last month, to talk with us about her journey and the work that still needs to be done. Our next Peace and Justice conversation via Zoom is Monday, December 1st, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, Heartbreak and Hope in the West Bank. David Grishaw Jones shares his experience visiting with activists, organizers, and leaders in the West Bank in May and June 2025. Also note that you can catch up on most of our past Monday night programs on our YouTube channel, which I will pull out and put in the chat here in a minute, or you can just, search for it. Also, I want you to know that this series is free and open to everyone and will remain so, but it does mean a lot and help a lot when we get donations. So nhpeaceaction.org/donate is where you can do that. And I'll put that YouTube link in. And with all that said, and hopefully folks have time to save the chat if they want, I just again want to give big thanks to Katie and to Scott and to all of you. And take care, everyone.